Hi everyone, today I just want to talk about 5 quick wins you get from quitting alcohol. It's an absolute game changer, like I mentioned before, and there's just nothing better than living an alcohol-free life. I'm only going to mention 5, but there's loads more. I speak about them in the other videos, but the first one I want to talk about is just a better sleep. And I think having a better sleep just tees you up for complete success. I remember when I was a binge drinker before. I've mentioned that I was never that kind of guy, never that guy to wake up in the morning and kind of need to drink a beer to function or anything like that. I didn't really drink midweek because I had work the next day and I knew I'd feel terrible, so it was normally a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I always remember just my sleep being awful. I think the worst part for me was those times where I'd overslept on the Sunday and or maybe even on the Monday, and I had to get up, go to work, and I'd woken up maybe 2 in the morning during the night, absolutely sweating in a pool of sweat, which was just horrendous, staring at the roof with all these thoughts going through my head, the million thoughts of anxiety, worrying about nothing. But now, even last night, the night before that, I went to bed at about 10 o'clock and I just woke up 5, 6 in the morning, woke up once to do the toilet during the night, and that was it. An absolute perfect night's sleep. And getting up when it's still dark outside and just having a shower and everything's clean and the flat's looking great, and you just have everything it takes to just absolutely smash the day. And just that better sleep is just something that I would never ever give up again, especially when I'm reminded of how awful my sleep was for years and how much an impact that must have on your body to just never get proper REM sleep. The second quick win is definitely anxiety going. All your anxiety won't disappear overnight. You might have some financial issues that's going on. Thankfully, I didn't. Maybe that's because I wasn't drinking kind of like every day. The amount of money you must spend if you're really hammering it every day, especially in the pub, you must spend an absolute fortune. But some of these things like repairing relationships, money issues, money woes, they will be there, but they will go away over time, because you will have the clear mind and you'll start putting a plan in place. You'll start paying them off with all that extra money you're saving. But that anxiety that I'm speaking about is that horrible anxiety you had, especially after a bit of a binge, a bender, a weekend away, where you would wake up in the morning and just have the absolute fear of everything. You worry about family, you worry about friends, you worry about pets, you worry about maybe letters that haven't been opened. I had some of them as well, thinking about things that happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, but I know that happened, but what if this had happened instead? And just those 1,000 thoughts that are just like fireworks going off in your brain, and you're pacing the corridors and you're praying your day away, which you never do, because one day, as you'll not have any days to pray away, so we shouldn't even be doing stuff like that. But that initial anxiety, I think the first 72 hours, I think that just dissipates a lot, and it kind of goes from maybe a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 down to like a 2 out of 10. And you will be sitting there, and thankfully all those pointless things, the what ifs, what if this happens, what if I do that, all these things you never think about before, they all start to go. And just that is such a big quick win for everyone. It's just it's such a game changer. A third one is just having money in the bank. It's always a quick win, because if you're spending £30 a day, $30, $50 a day, sitting at the pub, sitting at the bar, all that's just getting accumulated. And it's actually quite amazing after a week. If you're used to going out, I normally would go out Friday or Saturday, then have maybe parties in the house, and then Sunday maybe out to the pub for a few, and you're paying a lot of money. So on the actual Monday, when you're waking up and going to work, you think, I can't believe I only spent probably 5% of what I normally would. And then that quick win turns into a quick win for the month, where you look back and you've actually got all this money sitting there. It's quite remarkable, and that's some money that you can spend on other things. But it's just, obviously, even 3-4 days in, a week in, all that money that you've not spent at the shop, getting a bottle of wine on the way home, like say 5 or 6 beers at the pub, that all goes, and that becomes the start of setting up a savings account for yourself. And what I would recommend to do is, if you've got an online bank, just set up a side savings account and just set up an automatic transfer every day and stick $20, €20, £30, whatever, £10, even if it's a small amount, £5, put that money into that savings account, and just every day, week on week, watch that grow. And it's just a brilliant feeling knowing that you've got all this savings in the bank, especially if your job's a bit unsecure or you've got kind of ad hoc work. It's just amazing. Another quick win is brain fog, and I think brain fog just is the detriment to everybody. That feeling, we call it can't be arsed-itis, just a play on words, can't be bothered-itis, that feeling when you can't be bothered doing anything, you can't be bothered cooking, you can't be bothered going for a walk, you can't be bothered working, you can't be bothered studying, you can't be bothered doing anything, and that quickly lifts. And even within the first week, I bet you're starting to think, what about my pension? And I know they're kind of boring subjects, etc., but ultimately, hopefully we all retire one day, and you kind of start putting plans in that place, rename your savings account the holiday fund, and start booking some stuff. And you start thinking about that, I've always wanted to go to Japan, I'm going to do that. I've always wanted to do this course, I've always wanted to get my degree. That brain fog dissipating just opens up your eyes to everything, and it's amazing the shift in focus you have when you realise that, I'm going to have all this time. Because you can have all the time in the world, which we do before, we have the same 24 hours in a day we did before drinking and after drinking, but with the brain fog gone, like all these just amazing kind of positive thoughts come about the future, and losing brain fog for me was just unbelievable. The last point I want to win, which is a quick win, is just general health. I mean, I can't imagine, what my body was thinking on a Monday after a weekend of binge drinking. It just must have been thinking, what on earth are you doing? But, after a few days of not drinking, after a week of not drinking, everything just starts to look better. The bags under your eyes kind of start disappearing. They'll obviously take a bit of time. Your skin, won't be as dry. And believe you me, after a couple of months, that just gets wild. You just you don't have as much puffiness around the face. Your lips won't be as dry. And just everything, even when you're going to the toilet, it's just not, that thought of like, Jesus, that's worrying, when you have like golden yellow pee and you think, how dehydrated must I been? But your appetite returns within that as well, because you're feeling healthy, because you're not drinking, you start getting an appetite, so you start maybe eating better. You're not just eating leftovers of pizzas or last night's kebab, you'll actually start eating better as well. So that just has a knock-on effect to everything. And who wouldn't want that better feeling? Because I think we've all been there before, when you look in the mirror. I certainly did many times, and mate, that's one of the reasons I quit, to be honest. I'm not a vain guy at all, so there's nothing to do with vanity, but nobody wants to be, I'm 41, nobody wants to be, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and you're looking in the mirror thinking, I look dreadful, like proper awful, and that'll slowly go. And like I say, it's a quick win. And I remember the first time I quit, just week on week looking in the mirror, every other day, kind of getting ready in the morning. And I remember it just got to the point where I looked at myself and I thought, I can't believe how healthy you look. No bags under my eyes, skin was looking good. I just had my hair cut, my beard was looking kind of healthy, if you know what I mean. It wasn't looking dry and haggard, and I was just like, my God, that's just like absolutely insane. But one of the reasons I wanted to make this video is just, I want people to know that, although some things take a while, there are loads of quick wins, and in a world that we live in where everything's so impulsive and we need it now, we need this delivered now, I want this thing, I want to get fit now. There are so many quick wins, and they're only 5. And like I say, there's so many more. And just want you to focus on them and all these benefits that you've hopefully written down, and they'll all come as well, these long-term benefits, medium-term benefits. It really is a game changer. Hopefully you like this video. I'm releasing daily videos at the moment, and please like and subscribe if you like this one, and see you next time. Take care.